Okay, we're going to start this again. Hi there, everyone. Good evening. Kat Matlock here at Free Body, and I got my skeleton friend Charlie here. And tonight we're going to discuss sacroiliac joint pain and dysfunction. So, sacroiliac joint pain is such a debilitating issue, right? So, tonight I'm going to talk about the conditions that can set up for sacroiliac joint pain, and then some things that you can do to help it. And so first I want to explain a new perspective. What you might find is a new perspective on how you're having SI joint pain in the first place, because sometimes people will tell you it's going to take a long time to get rid of it. And I've actually seen SI joint dysfunction and pain clear up in literally one session, just one, and maybe like 15 minutes. So let's talk about this. The SI joint is the intersection of the sacrum, that bone in the center of the back, dangling off of the spine. And then the iliums are the two sides of the pelvis. So you have two SI joints, sacrum here, iliums here. And if we turn Charlie around here, we see that the sacrum has this kind of a flat fossa that the iliums come and bump into. And these joints, this joint, when these two bones, where these two bones come together, technically are thought to that they don't move, and they can move a tiny bit. They're really not meant to move. This is meant to be a really stable joint in your body that doesn't move very much. So let's talk about the muscles that pull on this joint and how it gets really out of whack, and then some really simple things that you can do to fix SI joint dysfunction and pain. So from the very top of the iliums on either side, crisscrossing across the lumbar vertebra, and then attaching along the lowest rib, you have a muscle called Quadratus Lumborum. So Quadratus Lumborum is a hip hiker. It's going to pull that ilium up toward the shoulder. It's your hip dancing muscle. It's going to lift that hip up toward the shoulder. So that's Quadratus Lumborum. In a moment, we're going to talk about another job that it does also. Now, on this iliac fossa, which just means a flat surface of a bone, we have gluteus medius that lines the top rim of the pelvis and comes down and attaches onto this greater trochanter of the femur, fills this whole side of the ilium, and it lifts the femur out to the side. It has a little mini-me version, gluteus minimus, which I've talked about some in this series. So we have gluteus medius, and then we have gluteus minimus, and both of them attach on the greater trochanter of the femur as well as along the ilium, and they lift that leg out to the side. Now, here's the thing. You have Quadratus lumborum attaching along this very top rim of the ilium, lifting the hip, the ilium up. It's just grabbing a hold, anchoring onto the ribs, grabbing a hold and lifting that ilium up. And then you have gluteus medius and gluteus minimus along the ilium, attaching into the femur, pulling that ilium down. So now we start to see where we can get into some dysfunction. We have QL lifting up and gluteus minimus and gluteus medius lifting down. They're in a little bit of a tug of war. Now, there are also there's so many muscles that attach through the pelvis and into the pelvis. We've got the ASIS points on the front. You got sartorius coming off down to the inner knee. You've got TFL coming down from that ASIS point right to the very front, in front of the greater trochanter of the femur, attaching into the iliotibial band. Now, those muscles can pull one side of the ilium down and forward. So essentially kind of crushing the SI joint a little bit there. So yes, you would want to do a little bit of release work in sartorius and tensor fascia lata to help alleviate that pull and help right the pelvis. My main focus today is this relationship between the Quadratus lumborum and gluteus medius and gluteus minimus. Something that's interesting about all three of those muscles is that they're all stabilizers. Gluteus minimus and gluteus medius are like the rotator cuff of the hip. They stabilize the femur in the socket. Quadratus lumborum is a stabilizer of the lumbar spine. Every step that you take, and especially with weight and with like jogging, running, it's why so many runners have SI joint issues, because that quadratus lumborum is constantly contracting to stabilize the lumbar spine in while you run. One of the most common reasons I see in my clinic and in my students with SI joint dysfunction, are you ready? Is standing with the weight on one leg. That's it. I kid you not, this is the problem. This right here is a major cause of SI joint dysfunction. So let's talk about why that happens. Thank you, Charlie. I'm going to move him off to the side a little bit. Okay, so when you stand with your weight on one side, like let's say I'm going to stand with my weight on the left side. When you stand with your weight on one side, now this is also going to lead to sciatica, all kinds of issues. So please learn this and try to stand with your weight evenly on both sides. But if you stand with your weight on one leg, you essentially drop the other hip down and lift this hip up. Well, what is that doing? That's shortening quadratus lumborum, right? That's quadratus lumborum's job, is to lift that hip. But now it's a positional thing. Here's another piece of this puzzle with quadratus lumborum, which, by the way, refers pain directly into the SI joint. In just a moment, I'm going to share with you the kinds of pain that you'll feel if your quadratus lumborum is loaded with trigger points. So let's say we stand with the weight on one side. And then, if your spine stayed neutral to your pelvis, you'd be tilted sideways. But we don't walk around sideways. we just don't do it, right? We're going to right ourselves. And the way that we right the torso is strong contraction of quadratus lumborum, which means that the quadratus lumborum muscle is at that point essentially holding the entire weight of your torso upright. When you stand with your weight on one leg, to hold your body upright, quadratus lumborum is going to be holding the weight of your entire torso, rib cage, all your organs, arms, head, the whole thing, right? That's going to significantly tax and strain your quadratus lumborum muscle, which is living right here. Now, quadratus lumborum can refer a deep ache in the glutes. So if you have SI joint dysfunction or pain and a deep ache in the glutes, you're definitely going to want to check out your quadratus lumborum. But so it's also going to refer directly into the SI joint. Now, quadratus lumborum has some interesting characteristics in its pain referral patterns. Pain referrals from quadratus lumborum can have an electric-like quality to them. So they might have might feel like a bee is stinging you a little bit in that joint. It might feel like a lightning strike, like you're just walking along and then all of a sudden there's a kind of a lightning strike there. That is classic quadratus lumborum. Quadratus lumborum tension and trigger points will bring you to your knees. You're going to get up out of bed in the middle of the night to go pee or whatever. You go to take a step, and when you step on that one side, your lightning strikes your SI joint and you hit the ground, and it feels safer and easier and less painful to crawl across the floor when your quadratus lumborum is loaded up, and it's going to strike like lightning right at your SI joint. Okay, so that's quadratus lumborum tension and trigger points leading to SI joint dysfunction. Now, as I said, the quadratus lumborum is lifting that SI joint, that ilium, up and kind of torquing along that ilium, that SI joint. Now, gluteus medius and gluteus minimus are the other piece of this particular equation when it comes to SI joint dysfunction. And gluteus minimus and gluteus medius also are going to get dysfunctional when you stand with your weight on one leg. Because as I said earlier, gluteus minimus and medius are rotator cuff of the hip muscles. They're trying to stabilize the femur into the socket. So when you stand with your weight on one leg, you're holding up the weight of the torso with the QL, and then you're also shoving the femur out of the socket. And when that happens, gluteus minimus and medius are going to activate really strongly to try to push that femur back into the socket. So gluteus medius refers directly into the SI joint. It also can create a deep ache in the buttocks, right? So QL also can create a deep ache in the buttocks. Gluteus medius and minimus can also create deep ache in the buttocks and sacroiliac joint pain. The electric quality comes from the quadratus lumborum. The instability of the hip feeling like, oh, my hip is going to give out, comes from gluteus minimus and gluteus medius. So how do we right this situation? Well, in my world, in the world of trigger points, you want to release the trigger points in that QL, and you want to release the trigger points in the gluteus minimus and medius. And I'm going to link some videos here where I show you how to use a ball to get into quadratus lumborum specifically, and then also gluteus medius at the wall. Those videos will be linked in the next little bit of time. But here's the thing, you also have to stop standing on one leg. You have to stop crossing your legs. You have to stop standing with all of your weight on one leg, because that is key. When you're standing with your weight all on one side, you're effectively shifting the pelvis so much and scrunching up QL and then taxing gluteus medius and gluteus minimus. Now, here's an interesting thing. I'm going to do a video on gluteus medius and restless leg syndrome, because gluteus medius is a key player in restless legs. And so you might start out having some sacroiliac joint pain, might even feel like stinging or electric quality. You might start having hip weakness. You might start having an ache in your glutes. You might start like go to pee and then drop to the floor because QL can't stabilize your low back when it's filled with trigger points and tension. So quadratus, and all of that gets set up just by standing with your weight on one side, because you're effectively really taxing those muscles. So practice standing with your weight on two legs. And if you do have, now here's one reason why people stand with their weight more on one side than the other is that they might be trying to actually level the pelvis. You might have a leg length discrepancy. You might have a dysfunction in the low back. And so one hip may be sitting higher than the other. And if it's this hip, you might stand with your weight on the other side to drop that hip down to effectively level the pelvis. And that's still going to create a lot of tension in that QL and the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus. So you want to do some other practices like strengthening the opposite side quadratus lumborum to try to level the pelvis with strength, and releasing the short side, strengthen the long side, to balance out the pelvis so that you're not having such a pull on that sacroiliac joint. So key players: quadratus lumborum, gluteus medius, gluteus minimus. They're in a tug of war on the ilium, pulling it down, pulling it up. And we can get into dysfunction in these muscle groups by standing with the weight on one leg. One of the most common ways that I see that people create the conditions for SI joint pain and dysfunction is standing with the weight on one leg. So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to link some videos and put some videos on here for releasing quadratus lumborum with a ball, and then releasing gluteus medius and gluteus minimus. Now, here's the thing. You can't forget the inner thighs. I haven't even talked about the inner thighs, but the adductors are essentially attaching to the along this inner rim of the pelvis and along the sitting bone, and curving around to the front of the pelvis. And they're drawing the femur in which then also can pull the ilium down and in. So they're a piece of the puzzle because they're such a big player in gluteus medius and gluteus minimus tension. So if I were having SI joint dysfunction in my body, which I have had years and years ago before I knew about how to fix things with balls and foam rollers, then I would work in the inner thighs, I would work in those outer hips, and I would work in the low back and that quadratus lumborum. And I will repeat, I have literally seen SI joint severe pain disappear in one session. It might take you longer if you've been standing with your weight on one side for a long period of time. Give it some time, deep breaths in your belly, release inner thighs, gluteus medius and minimus, and quadratus lumborum, and then let me know how that helps you. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Kat Matlock here at Free Body in Asheville, North Carolina. This Thursday, I'm starting a low back and hips series, live stream series, where you can ask questions. You can send me things that you want help with. Check it out, freebodynow.com. Starts Thursday, May 20th, I think, 20th or 21st, 2021. Thanks so much.